Yo, what it is, YouTube? It's your boy Nissan coming back with another bullseye of a tutorial here today on the channel. So I wanted to talk about how do I feel about bright vocals, how to get bright vocals in a couple different alternative ways. So let's not waste no time. Let's get right to it and let's get to listening to a little bit of music. All right, let's go.
Bounce, yeah, hey, yeah, know that shit don't ever bounce. Told your bitch to make it bounce, take a trip way out of town. Rockin' all designer down, know that shit don't ever bounce. Told your bitch to make it bounce, take a trip way out of town. Rockin' all designer down.
She gon' really buy his numbers, yeah, he really make it count. I ain't seen they ass before, heard of me through word of mouth. I remember I was hustling, get a call and flip a pound. Your bitch with me in the woods, she with me through all the route.
Know that I ain't fucking around, know that I ain't fucking around. Back when I ain't had no money, I remember I was.
Okay, so you guys get the general idea of what I wanted to talk here today. So usually when I think of bright vocals, I always think about somebody like Drake. But when it comes to trying to truly achieve those bright mainstream vocals, it's all about a relative situation. Like if somebody tells you that, oh, the mall is right around the corner from that little house, the little trap house or whatever, you got to understand where that, thing is in relative location to the rest of the city, the rest of the neighborhood. So that's the thing about bright vocals. I always think about the actual voice of the artist. You know, some people will say, oh, you just got to go on the SSL and just start cranking up the green band or the red band or whatever. But you got to already understand too that some people's voices are already brighter than other people's voices. You know, usually people who don't have deep voices, their voice might just come off a little bit of brighter because of the way kind of like the tonal seesaw works. You know, it's kind of like a seesaw. Think about it. So if you have two kids on both sides, one being the low frequencies and the other being the high frequencies, let's say you got everything balanced, right? As you know, you have more of the lows, right? You know, more of the lows. You take out the lows, what happens is the higher end frequencies come up. And if you take out the highs, if the highs drop down, right, kind of like if the high frequencies was on one side of the seesaw and they started sinking down, the bass frequencies was come up. So that's another thing that I like to think about when it comes to getting bright vocals is cutting before I start to like boost. So usually what you can do to achieve the bright vocals is always try to figure out how to do it in a non-invasive way. Usually my last ditch of effort is usually like to start doing boosting, but usually when I do, I pick like an analog channel strip because those have like a kind of like a not too precise way of actually doing the boosting EQ. But when I try to make my vocals brighter, I always try to, start to clean out the body, start to clean out the booty of the low vocal, you know what I mean? So usually it's always like trying to notch out that little, honky frequency around the, 100 to 300. Everybody's voice is different, and usually something like a low shelf and everything like that. Also using filters as well is a great way of just kind of, playing around with the seesaw, like how I just said. If you can make the lows of the vocal like kind of like drop down, it will make the highs kind of be perceived to be brighter. Okay, so another great way of making bright vocals, in my opinion, is using something like multi-band compression or like an exciter type of thing. So if you can compress the higher end as well, it will kind of make everything just seem brighter. So this is a preset I love to use to get my vocals to sound bright. It's called a pop vocal, and it has like a really fast attack, really fast release, especially on the high end. It's kind of like working on that air and kind of making it like pump and everything like that. So that's a different alternative, the actual EQ itself.
Bounce, yeah, yeah, know that shit don't ever bounce. Told your bitch to make it bounce, take a trip way out of town. Rockin' all designer down, know that shit don't ever bounce. Told your bitch to make it bounce, take a trip way out of town. Rockin' all designer down.
She gon' really buy his numbers, yeah, he really make it count. I ain't seen they ass before, heard of me through word of mouth. I remember I was hustling, get a call and flip a pound. Your bitch with me in the woods, she with me through all the route.
Know that I ain't fucking around, know that I ain't fucking around. Back when I ain't had no money, I remember I was down.
So essentially what we're doing is we're kind of like boosting the noise floor, but we're doing it in a multi-band fashion only on the top end. So now you hear more of the room tone. Now you hear more of the actual top end frequencies. So because you hear more air, you hear more whoo, you hear more clouds. Now you perceive it as being brighter. You know, usually when you see clouds in the sky, what do you think about it? Oh, wow, it's a bright day. So that's another way of thinking about it as well. You know, like how you make things like flam and move and release and stuff like that. Hearing more air will make you perceive things brighter, like literally the sound of the room. But, people always talk trash about boosting the noise floor. Well, shit, I'm the type of person, I never rule out anything. So pretty much what we're doing is the multi-band compressor you see, like it's like pumping and releasing the top end. So we're boosting like the noise floor of the ceiling. We're pretty much like treating the vocal like a party and raising the roof pretty much. So now because you see more of the roof now, like you kind of hear more of the air and everything like that. After that, another great way that I love to achieve my bright vocals is through saturation. So usually with saturation, let's say I'm going to show you another way as well with the parallel compression, but usually with saturation, it's a little bit better because you can potentially even push it harder than you could possibly push, say for something like an EQ. Because when you do something like a EQ, an EQ I always think about something like the mag EQ. You know what I mean? There's other frequencies within inside of the same neighborhood. Like I said, getting bright vocals is a relative thing. You got to understand where you're sitting at in the ballpark. It's kind of like a short person and a tall person. So if you see somebody who is maybe, let's say they're like 5'10", right, in a city full of little people, you would be like, damn, that boy is like tall as hell, like he's 5'10". But if you took that same person who's 5'10" and you put him next to like an NBA basketball team, they would be short as hell. But that person was just tall to you in a different city, because it's like a relative thing in making music, like, okay, like where does this vocal sit up against like stuff like the hi-hats, the open hats and stuff like that. Usually if you have like dull open hi-hats and stuff like that, you might not have to make your vocals too bright, because in contrast, the vocals have a point of reference, like the hi-hats are kind of mucky and stuff like that. So the vocal doesn't have to be super bright. It just only has to be a little bit more bright, because you've already shown them what dark is. Now you're showing them what a flashlight is with the vocal, and now they have a way of referencing. But if you have a situation where the hi-hats are extremely bright in the song, I usually take that as a cue that I probably shouldn't make my vocals too bright, So you got to always listen to the 2-track beat, and the 2-track beat will tell you how bright you can make your vocals. And you also got to pay attention to the voice of the artist, as well as the microphone that you're using. Some microphones bring out more of that brightness than others. You know what I mean? So like I was trying to say about the fresh air though, you see how rather than, this preset is called add air, rather than to like actually boost what I want to hear, what I'll do sometimes is I might do like like a bell, and I might boost like a little bit above that frequency. And it's kind of like the frequency I actually want to boost is like Modern Warfare 3, where it's getting hit into the crossfire of the EQ, you know what I mean? Like I'm not actually grabbing that thing directly, but I'm hitting it through the crossfire, you know what I mean? Or if you know what I mean, like you see how, let's say if I did want to boost something like 5K, rather than to like go over here and actually boost 5K itself, what you can do is you can just go a little bit above 5K, so you will still get the benefits of that bright vocal, but not the potential other artifacts and stuff like that of the harshness. Because sometimes if you boost 5K, right, it's the whole family. You pull up with that plate of chicken, the cousin got to eat, the brothers got to eat. You see everything around here is also getting boosted as well. And sometimes you might not want to boost that stuff because that's where the harshness is at. So doing some shit like just boosting that same frequency you want to boost, but a little bit higher up, is a great way of getting that sound. But when it comes to saturation, I like saturation too, because it's a great alternative to boosting EQ. Something like the fresh air, or even just opening up a pull tech. Sometimes if I want to get my vocals to be bright without them being harsh, what I do is like I just open up what is it called? Let me see right here. What I do is I just open up a pull tech on the flat preset, and from there that will like already make the vocals brighter, just running through the circuitry.
Yeah, know that shit don't ever bounce. Told your bitch to make it bounce. Taking trips way out of town. Rocking all designer down. Know that shit don't ever bounce. Told your bitch to make it bounce. Taking trips way out of town. Rocking all.
So this isn't your typical vocal where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna show you how to get it super bright. I'm trying to show you alternative ways that help you get your vocal bright, but not harsh. Because sometimes if you get your vocal to be so bright at the cost of it being harsh, it don't matter how bright and pretty it sounds. It's just fucking annoying to listen to. It doesn't matter how cool you are. If you're annoying as hell, people don't want to be around you. And people will see your music like that. It doesn't matter how flashy that motherfucker is. If he's annoying, I don't want to be around him. Just like they'll see the song like that where they don't want to listen to the song. So I love using the fresh air as well, just because like it has a beautiful way of allowing me to make it bright without actually doing the boosting EQ. Is using saturation to make it bright. You know, so this is a plugin I use consistently to get those mainstream vocals. Let's listen to it with and without.
Yeah, know that shit don't ever bounce. Told your bitch to make it bounce. Taking trips way out of town. Rockin' all designer down. Know that shit don't ever bounce. Told your bitch to make it bounce. Taking trips way out of town. Rockin' all designer down.
She go really bout his numbers, yeah, he really make it count. I ain't seen they ass before, heard of me through word of mouth. I remember I was hustling, get a call and flip a pound. Your bitch with me in the woods, she with me through all the route.
Know that I ain't fucking around. Know that I ain't fucking around. Back when I ain't had no money, I remember I was down.
Just giving us a little bit of that brightness, turning the electricity back on, turning the lights on, you know, essentially, you know, opening up the headlights of the mix of the lead vocal. And the last thing I wanted to show you guys is using like a parallel compressor, a tube parallel compressor, just like how I opened up a Fairchild, just how I opened up a Puig Child, a Puig Tech or whatever the hell it's called. You can also open up a bright compressor, like something like the Tube Tech CO1B, and hardly compress. You know, even when I use something like this, I'm only using the tube circuitry. So understanding that tubes can give you the brightness, you know, is a great way of getting your bright vocals. So I love using the CO1B Tube Tech on parallel only, just so I can get the sound of that circuitry, and it helps me kind of like declog the vocal, just making it really, 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 really seeming like it's having a great day and being so bright. You know, usually when people are having a great day and they feel so bright and so bubbly, their voice gets a little higher. So you can remember it like that too. People usually who have higher voices, their voices will just naturally be bright, you know? So you got to accept that. You got to understand, where do you stand at? Do you have a deep voice that's really low? Do you have a mid-range voice? Do you have a high voice that doesn't have that much low end? So you got to understand all of that stuff too when it comes to trying to achieve bright vocals that work for you. Just because you saw Drake's settings, it might not work on your voice, because your voice might be completely different. You know what I mean? You might already have the brightness in your voice, so you don't need to add some shit you already got. You got to understand that, you know?
Hey, yeah, know that shit don't ever bounce. Told your bitch to make it bounce. Taking trips way out of town. Rockin' all designer down. Know that shit don't ever bounce. Told your bitch to make it bounce. Taking trips way out of town. Rockin' all designer down.
She go really bout his numbers, yeah, he really make it count. I ain't seen they ass before, heard of me through word of mouth. I remember I was hustling, get a call and flip a pound. Your bitch with me in the woods, she with me through all the route.
Know that I ain't fucking around. Know that I ain't fucking around. Back when I ain't had no money, I remember I was down. I ain't have a lot of dough, but I had a lot of doubt. One thing about these accounts, you can never count them.
So essentially, I'm spreading the responsibility of trying to get the bright vocals through all of my processing, through saturation, a little bit of that, you know, parallel compression as well, a little bit of top end EQ, of course. You know, always thinking about the curves of the actual EQ that I'm using, because every EQ, especially like an analog EQ, they have different types of curves, you know. So we'll talk about that in another day. If you guys did like this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, okay? If you got any more video suggestions, drop it down below. Just want to say thanks a lot for being a great part of my YouTube family. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Appreciate y'all now. Peace.